Welcome to this Office for Students video tutorial that will provide information about the Access and Participation Data Dashboard and explain some of its key concepts. For a tutorial on how to navigate the dashboard, please watch the video How to Navigate the Access and Participation Data Dashboard. This video tutorial will cover an explanation of what the Access and Participation Data Dashboard is and what it can be used for, data coverage, the 5 student lifecycle stages, the chart types that are used in the dashboard, statistical uncertainty, split indicators, ABCs, Tundra, rounding and suppression, and where to find further guidance. The Access and Participation Data Dashboard shows data for individual providers and for the sector across different student characteristics. The data includes indicators and gaps as measures of performance for each stage of a student's journey through higher education. When we say gaps, we mean differences in outcomes between groups of students with different characteristics. These measures of performance are used when talking about indications of risk at a provider. We've published this data to help universities and colleges develop and monitor their access and participation plans. The dashboard presents data in a consistent and transparent way and makes it easy to compare different student groups and pinpoint specific areas where a university or college can make improvements. You should use the dashboard alongside the Equality of Opportunity Risk Register when developing a plan. The data covers UK domiciled students studying at providers registered with the Office for Students at the time of publication. Information about a student is attributed to the provider where they're registered, which for some students will be different from the provider where they are taught. Information about the whole sector includes data from all English higher education providers that are registered with the OFS at the time of publication. The measures report the latest 6 years of data available at the time of publication. I've mentioned that the dashboard shows measures of performance for 5 life cycle stages, which represent a student's journey through higher education. Let's look at these in more detail. Access shows the profile of students entering higher education. Access measures report on the number of entrants with a particular attribute as a percentage of all entrants. For example, they report the percentage of entrants who are female. Continuation tracks a cohort of entrants to higher education through the early stages of their course. It measures the percentage of those who are in active study or have qualified on a census date. For full-time and apprenticeship students, the census date is set at 12 months and 15 days after their start date. For part-time students, the census date is set at 24 months and 15 days after their start date. Completion tracks a cohort of entrants to higher education through the subsequent years of their course. It measures the percentage of those who are in active study or have qualified on a census date. For full-time and apprenticeship students, the census date is set at 4 years and 15 days after their start date. For part-time students, the census date is set at 6 years and 15 days after their start date. Completion is defined in the same way as continuation, but with a longer time frame. Degree outcomes or attainment gives the number of students who were awarded first or upper second class degrees as a percentage of qualifiers from level 6+ degrees who were awarded classified degrees. Progression is the number of students progressing to professional or managerial employment, further study or other positive outcomes 15 months after gaining their qualification. This data is derived from responses to the Graduate Outcome Survey from the 2017 to 18 academic year onwards. Students' performance for each life cycle stage can be represented using indicators, gaps, and ratios. An indicator shows the proportion of students with a particular attribute or outcome. A gap or difference in performance is the difference between 2 indicators in percentage points. For example, the gap between a continuation rate of 98% for students without a reported disability and 95% for students with a reported disability would be 3 percentage points. A ratio is the ratio between two attributes or split indicators within the same student characteristic or split type. For example, you could be looking at the completion ratio between young and mature students. Gaps on the dashboard are referred to as differences in performance within the context of an access and participation plan, and both indicators and gaps on the dashboard are referred to as indications of risk. For progression, there's an additional chart type, interim study. This provides information about the number of students that counted negatively towards the progression indicator but reported that they had undertaken interim study or significant interim study between graduating and being surveyed as part of the graduate outcomes survey. This information is reported as a proportion of students in the progression population. Each indicator and gap value in the dashboard represents the student outcomes observed at the provider at a particular point in time and is used to make inference on the provider's underlying performance. Observed indicators values are subject to random variations, which could give rise to slightly different values being calculated, even though the underlying performance of the provider remain the same. This potential for random variation in the indicator values is known as statistical uncertainty. The Access and Participation Data Dashboard includes information on statistical uncertainty for indicators and gaps. It can be visualized for one student attribute or split indicator at a time, and it is represented with shaded bars. For more information on how to see and interpret the shaded bars, we suggest you refer to the video tutorial How to Navigate the Access and Participation Data Dashboard. A split indicator type is a categorization of students. The different categories or attributes within a categorization are called split indicators. For example, ethnicity is a split indicator type and white is a split indicator for that type. The Access and Participation Data Dashboard reports on 7 split indicator types, which are Tundra Quintile, Deprivation Quintile by IMD 2019, Ethnicity, Age, Disability Reported, ABC's Quintile, and Eligibility for free school meals. Some additional split indicator types are available in the detailed view of the data dashboard. These split indicator types allow users to see a disaggregation of the data to understand inequalities further. Tundra, or Tracking Underrepresentation by Area, is an area-based measure of young participation. It uses tracking of state-funded mainstream school pupils in England to calculate young participation to higher education. Tundra classifies local areas across England into 5 equal quintiles based on the proportion of 16-year-olds state-funded mainstream school pupils who participate in higher education aged 18 or 19 years. Quintile 1 shows the lowest rate of participation, whilst Quintile 5 shows the highest rate of participation. The main differences between Tundra and Polar 4, the other area-based measure of participation in higher education developed at the OFS, are Tundra uses data linking to track individual students from the GCSE cohort at age 16 to participation in higher education at age 18 to 19. Polar 4 does not use data linking. Tundra focuses on pupils in state-funded mainstream schools, excluding those pupils at independent schools, special schools, and pupil referral units. Polar 4 includes all 18-year-olds from an area and therefore doesn't place restrictions on school types. Tundra focuses on areas within England, whereas Polar 4 is a UK-wide measure. You can match students to a Tundra quintile based on their home postcode prior to entry to higher education. Tundra is a supplement to Polar 4. Using both measures together can reveal more insights about higher education participation than one of these measures alone. Associations between characteristics of students, or ABCs, is a set of measures that seeks a better understanding of how performance vary for groups of students with different sets of characteristics, for example, ethnicity, sex, and background. Statistical modeling is used to identify how these characteristics and their interactions affect students' performance for each life cycle stage and to group students into 5 equal groups or quintiles. Students in quintile 1 are least likely to achieve a positive outcome for the measure in question, and students in quintile 5 are most likely to achieve a positive outcome. There are 7 ABCs measures for different stages of the student life cycle. There is one measure for access, while continuation, completion, and progression each have 2 measures for full-time and part-time modes. The student characteristics used to group students should not have an impact on students' outcomes, but the evidence shows that they do. We have rounded the data in the dashboard. Denominators or head counts have been rounded to the nearest 10, indicators, percentages, ratios, benchmarks, differences, and their confidence intervals have been rounded to the nearest 0.1. If a data point or a line is missing, this could be because there is no data or because the data has been suppressed. There will be some combinations of provider, mode, level, life cycle, or attribute that have no data. In specific cases, the data is unavailable or non-applicable. For example, we do not have data on ABC's quintiles for attainment. We suppress data for a variety of reasons, including if there are fewer than 23 students in the denominator, or there are other data protection reasons. For progression, we suppress the data if the graduate outcome survey response rate hasn't met the 30% threshold. For more technical guidance and detailed descriptions, please refer to the latest version of our algorithms. Click on Data and Analysis in the blue banner at the top. In the section Our Approach and Methods towards the bottom of the page, click on Student Outcome and Experience Measures and then on Documentation. You will find a document with descriptions and definitions of student outcomes and experience measures used in the OFS regulation, instructions to rebuild the indicators from individualized data, and core algorithms, which explain how to calculate the fields included in the OFS individualized files from the student data. For more information on ABCs, please visit the ABCs area on the OFS website. You can find it by typing ABCs in the search box on the OFS website. For Tundra, please refer to the Tundra section of the Young Participation by Area pages on the OFS website. This can also be found by typing Tundra in the search box on the OFS website. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions on the dashboard or the calculation of the indicators, please contact Provider Metrics at officeforstudents.org.uk.